My goal in the work I do, no matter what that work actually looks like day to day, is that humanizing work so that we reach a place where there's no distinction in our humanness. You are as human as I am human, and that matters. That's all that matters, is that our humanness has no distinction.
Free power jumpers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very cozy. This is a very cozy set.
Yeah.
It's nice. I'm impressed.
We're at like our full aesthetic peak here. Like, I just feel ultimate coziness, comfort, and joy.
I'm doing this thing lately where I just don't even check what I look like on the screen. I just roll with it.
It's better not to know.
It's better not to know,
I think that's smart.
But then a month later, I'm like, why don't I ever look into a mirror before going on
be
camera
like
for something that will live on the internet
for 10
forever?
hours, and you're like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, Jennica.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
The video podcast.
I'm really happy to be here. Really happy to be here.
Okay, so I set this up because, well, honestly, just as like, matching up friends that you just think would get along really well together. The more I've got to know Jennica, I'm like, oh my God, you and Sam would get along so well.
That's true. You have been saying that.
I have been to both of you. So finally, here we are.
This is like a
I'm
weird
very
blind
on the
date
spot
on YouTube.
in public, yeah.
It's a podcast blind date.
We'll give you a button, and at any point you want to tap out, you can just hit the button, and we'll all leave.
The best way to find out
We'll all
if people are
just disappear.
friends. Just throw them online in a YouTube video together.
Yeah, exactly. So Jennica is a master of many trades. You are an actor, a writer, a director, a dog parent, a
knitter?
cat parent, a knitter,
Mental health professional.
You've worked with refugees and
Yes.
done all kinds of things. So I just knew that we could talk for a million years.
Yeah, there's so much we can talk about. I'm very, very excited and honored to be here. So thanks for bringing me.
Yeah, so happy to have you.
And this isn't a Mormon-related story today, right?
Yeah, you're not of Mormon background.
Look at us diversifying.
Not. Although I love unpacking that stuff. As you know.
Yes.
I think it's really interesting, really, really interesting. And as a mental health professional, I've been on the side of like supporting people with religious trauma and people who are coming out of the Mormon world. I just think it's very specific, very unique, and very, very difficult in a way that actually coming out of other religious groups or faith-based communities is not, because I grew up Catholic and Lutheran. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and leaving those was truthfully kind of easy. So.
I've heard that from multiple Lutherans. They're like, it's not a lot to like rebel against. You're just kind of like, peace. They're like, peace.
Yeah, basically.
Do you not have Catholic guilt from your time in Catholicism?
No, I was young, and I think it was really about, I was raised by a single mom who is...
Me too.
Oh, see, another thing we relate on. I love that. Who is very open to you trying to explore options and understanding what feels right to you and asking questions. She's a very curious person, and I'm a very curious person. And so she was never really heavy-handed about religion in a way that made me feel like an immense sense of guilt or shame about exploring something else.
How nice.
But I think that, to me, Catholicism to me feels like just ancient, like it's got like vampires existed in Catholic. Like that is real.
Talk about a developed aesthetic.
Like
dialed.
That's their thing. And so, but I don't personally feel any particular love loss or love for it. So I feel maybe just fortunate that I, in my personal life, was supported in exploration, which led to me feeling a lot less of that shame or guilt around not being engaged in that religion anymore.
Well, we're Tana, based on what you know, where do you think we should start this story today?
I think you should just give us like kind of a little overview of your story.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
How you arrived here today.
Yeah. So I am adopted. I'm mixed race, Southeast Asian and Middle Eastern. I am was adopted at a young age by a single mom who just was single mom by choice, which is cool. And so she adopted my oldest sister. She adopted another little girl between us who passed unexpectedly before coming, and then me. and I almost didn't come to the U.S. So I feel like I kind of started my early life with a lot of second, third chances, so to speak. Like I almost didn't come and survive India. I was very sick when I came to the U.S., and I'm a cancer survivor. I got cancer at a young age. And so I just think a lot of things kind of led me to feel a sense of gratitude for the fact that I was alive, which maybe gave me a different life perspective. And then grew up.
That does just like radiate from you. I was thinking today before this episode, I was like, the thing I love about Jennica is like, you, when you walk in, people say this about people who just walk in a room and they're just like shining. That's you. And everything that you do, you just feel so like present in what you're doing. Like just very in the moment.
Yeah, I will have to say I've had to curate that. Like I think I was lost in a lot of anxiety and performance-driven anxiety. Like I had to prove that I was worth keeping around. That was a big hurdle for me as a kid. I grew up doing theater and dancing and performing and playing music. I was a semi-professional violinist for years, but I grew up playing violin. And all of those things were things I loved to do, but I also was a serious perfectionist about them because I felt a strong need to prove value.
Mm-hmm.
And I think adoption was a big part of that. Like, oh, well, I actually didn't belong here to begin with. My mom brought me here. She picked me or purchased me, and I came here. And so to prove my value in terms of staying here, I have to show that I'm worth keeping around. And that was a big thing that I was like very, I would say, like lost within that way of existing for a long time. And I think, it kind of folds into the immigrant experience generally that I hear from a lot of other immigrants, where it's like you either need to prove your value and your usefulness, or you won't have value and usefulness, and we will get rid of you. We will find a way to get rid of you. And so I grew up with a lot of that, and I think I really appreciate your comment about presence, because I have really spent energy and time curating that, like being very present, being like very aware of what's going on in me and external to me, and parsing out what belongs to me and what doesn't. I think becoming a mental health professional has helped with that. I think also just going through life trials and sorting through them as I've gone through them has helped. But yeah.
Sorry, just had a quick question. In terms of that feeling growing up of like sort of having to prove your right to be here, was that coming from any external sources, or like how do you feel like you came into that sense?
Good question. I think honestly, a lot of it was just like a thing that maybe I think it's a combination of external things and very internal things. Like I think that it's really hard to talk about being adopted, because I think a lot of people don't have the same experience. It's like so diverse across all adoptees. But I do think that when you're transnationally adopted, and a lot of people are adopted as babies, there's a sense that like the person that was your parent gave you away or didn't want you anymore. And so that sense can kind of feed into like, okay, well then for people to want me, I need to do something different. Like it's on me that she didn't want me, not on her. And as a mental health professional I've worked with a lot of kids who have survived a lot of abuse and trauma. And then I've also worked with a lot of refugees internationally in global settings and here stateside in the US. And there still is like a sense that, especially for little kids who go through trauma or go through loss at a young age, you think it's your fault. People talk about like, oh, when parents get divorced, they're like, kids automatically think it's their fault. And a part of that is neurologic. It's that like kids don't have the brain development to understand the complexity of the situation. They can't take on their parents' perspective and say, oh, actually, this has nothing to do with me. It is just totally about them.
Yes.
And I'm stuck in the middle of it.
Right.
My mom was like, it's your fault.
And I feel like some kids do get that feedback, right? And that's hard, because I think that at the end of the day, it's really not, the child has no capacity to make decisions. They don't know, and they can't even think through the problem the way that an adult can,
I was gonna say, so much of our like maladaptive behaviors and paradigms are from just like a somatic experience, like of early abandonment, of whatever. And then it's our brain writing a script about why we are feeling that feeling, like a brain that's developing, trying to give a reason for something it can't possibly understand.
Exactly. That is the perfect way of putting that. And I think that it's interesting when I was working with refugees, slightly tangential, but like when they go through some of the worst trauma I can imagine or have ever heard of, you know, parents would have to simplify the trauma down to like, we all experience the same thing, and what everyone experienced is what I experienced internally. My reaction to it is also my child's reaction to it, because it's too complex when you're in survival mode or when you're barely coming out of survival mode to consider that like everyone in your family experienced that one event very differently and narrated it differently, and their somatic experience tied with their narrative is different. And something I would work with a lot of our refugee families is like, you have to consider your children experienced the exact same thing as you, but they experienced it completely differently. The way they internalize what it meant is going to be different than the way you internalized what it meant. You have to start seeing them as unique. Now that you're in a physically safe environment to actually do so. And, you know, that's the way we work. And so I think I took my narrative of my mom abandoned me, or I wasn't good enough for her to keep into the rest of my life as a young kid. Like, so I have to then prove that I am good enough to keep for my new mom and for everyone I encounter. Like, and so I was always top of my class, perfect at everything, good, worked super hard to be the best. And
it sucks that you did. Like, we haven't even mentioned your
Sometimes
cooking
trauma
yet.
really pays off.
you know, or like I had to be the best, and then I also had to be like the most agreeable. Never rock any boat, never cause any problem, never make anybody I never wanted to give anybody a reason to discard me, because I felt like I was always right on the edge of being discarded for some reason or another.
Which I don't know how it is for you, but when I have felt that and seen that, it can often lead to like, what's the word? Kind of like covert control of things, because or like passivity and resentments can build because things aren't straightforward or upfront or
it's a self erasure that is actually feels very passive, or it seems like kind of falls into a victim realm, but it's actually very controlling. And I think that's a big part of it, is like you end up trying to control everyone around you because
their perceptions.
Their perceptions of you, so that they don't get rid of you, you know, instead of just being truthful and honest and about who you are and how you are and the fullness of yourself, including all of your flaws, including the fact that sometimes you won't get along with people and whatever else. So I think, you know, losses as I got older in my life, and also just changes in my life and in me, and a lot of work, a lot of healing work, I think led to kind of the person I am now, which is, I would say, a lot more centered, a lot more okay with losing things and losing people, and recognizing that life moves in a very complicated, very messy way, but there's a lot of beauty that can be lived and understood in it too. But it took a lot of time.
Yeah, I believe
It still takes time. Like I still have to grapple with some of the grief associated with all those losses and those things.
Yeah.
Did you get sort of feedback from the world as you were growing up and trying to be perfect that you were good? Like, would you get a lot of external validation for the ways you would try?
Yeah, does that like perpetuate the
Yes,
I'm doing it?
I think that's such an amazing question that I don't feel like it's asked that often, and the answer is yes, definitely. I think you know, it's funny, when I was really young, before I could make a sense of any of this, but before I could make a lot of sense of what was going on within me, I would get a lot of "you're so lucky" responses. You're so lucky that your mother, this white savior woman, and that's not what people would say, but it's how they'd act, saved you from the wilds of the jungle.
Yeah.
Die in the savagery of another country, you know.
We just interviewed Tara Herbert, she's called, and she is Black and was adopted into a white Mormon family, and that was such a massive part of her experience, was people constantly being like, you should feel so grateful that they didn't leave you in a dumpster. People would say that to her.
Yes.
And it was like this constant messaging. And even when it's
Yes.
benevolent and it's like, you're so, you know, it's still
Yes. Oh, yes.
just
That
rings
was
Oh,
of
that's so
like,
fucked up, especially to a kid.
I
know.
actually started writing a script idea called like Lucky Penny about this idea that like, because I actually had a friend who adopted 2 kids from China in my adult life. She became my friend in my adult life. But she was unable to have children. She and her husband both spoke Chinese and had lived in China. So they were like, we'd like to adopt kids, and maybe we will from China. Because we speak the language and we can go live there for a while. So they went and lived in China for a while together and then adopted their kids. And people would tell their kids the same thing. You're so lucky. Oh my gosh. And my friend said to me, she said, every time someone would say that to my kid, I would say, actually, no.
it's the least they deserve.
Yes.
You know?
And she would say, I'm lucky. You
Yeah.
don't see a lucky penny on
Yes.
the ground and say, you're so lucky I found you. You see the lucky penny and you say, I'm so lucky that I found you. Like you are the thing that makes my life better. And so I haven't really written anything about my adoption because it's been hard. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm ready to dive into it. So I am wanting to write a script called Lucky Penny about that same idea, about like you find the thing and the person and you are fortunate. You are better for it, not the opposite.
That is
Please
a
write
brand, I've
it.
never heard that before. Like that's like a brand new idea to me. Just that metaphor.
Yeah,
That's
it's so
perfect.
good. Perfect title, perfect concept.
Yeah.
Please, 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 please,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
Everyone, hype up. Say, do it
Let's
now.
do it. Yeah, but I do think similar to your other guest, like I did get a lot of validation when I did things right. And I mean, that's kind of the way the world works anyway. It's like, oh, you work really hard at, I could use violin as a great example because it's very concrete. I could practice a lot and do really well. And then I'd go to these competitions or these things and I'd get the top score. I'd get the best feedback. And even if I messed up one note, I'd go home and cry. And my mom would be like, you were still the best. And I'm like, doesn't matter. I used to
that's
say
brutal.
second place was first loser. That was like a thought I had, you know, because it was like I had to be better than the best. I had to be the top or else
Or you're like kind of that.
there was risk.
I really relate to, I always had to be top of the class too. But I'm always fascinated because it seems like most people's experience who have that kind of complex, like I have to be the best, have like the agreeableness. And I almost just had this like rampant disagreeableness where I just it's like I didn't even believe I could be liked. So I just didn't even try and wasn't even like, I don't know. I just kind of assumed everyone wouldn't like me. So like, why bother?
That's kind of rebel energy that I now in my life would love to have. I
know. I'd like to get some of it back now. I'm like, I feel like I've now swung the other way and need to get back to a healthy middle. But I'm like, I wonder why.
We all need some disagreeableness. I just want to put that out there. Like, we need to be disagreeable.
Agree to disagree.
Thank you.
So how, you said you've done a lot of healing. Did you have like a moment or like a certain age in your life where you were suddenly like, oh shit, like kind of realizing the situation, you know?
Or more gradual.
I think it was more piecemeal, more gradual. I lost my first love when I was in high school, at the end of high school, to suicide. And I think that was such a trauma that it shoved me into getting going to therapy, which I hadn't
believe it.
really done as a kid because I was like a good kid. Like that's the other thing is I was getting rewarded for behaviors that are very socially acceptable, working yourself to the bone, being a perfectionist, doing your best, being very friendly, not letting anybody know you have issues, masking any problems you had. Like I was very rewarded for that behavior socially and in school and in all my extracurricular things. I was successful. I was a good kid. And so all the things I was grappling with internally, they would come out sometimes in fights with my mom or whatever, but they were isolated to those experiences. And then I would be agreeable again, you know, and I would handle my stuff kind of through journaling or whatever. But it wasn't until that hit me and I was going to college and I was trying to process that, and I really went into, I would say, probably my first pretty serious depressive period, that my mom was like, you really need help, and I was very resistant. For about a year, I was resistant, and then I myself was struggling with suicidal ideation, and so I went to therapy, and my first therapist, she ended up being a therapist for mine on and off for years after that. She was really, really good at helping me just think through things differently, and she would bring them up in a way that was helpful. And as someone who has helped people get therapists, and I will just put this out here for everyone, like listening and for us, I really think I see therapy as like a great gift. I think that everyone deserves to go to therapy. I don't think it's like have to. I think if we can flip the mindset around it, it's useful.
Deserve to.
I think everyone deserves it. And I think that the trick is to find someone who speaks your language, not just in terms of how you communicate like this, but how you communicate to yourself. So like, can they key into your internal language? And I think that that's a really big part of successful therapy, because you just need someone who can talk to you in a way that you can talk to yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And so that therapist was so good at just saying things in a way that made sense to me. And one time she was like, have you ever considered the idea that like you're not special, that like you are like everybody else?
That's been huge for me.
And that's like actually totally okay.
Yeah.
And that means that you're allowed to have flaws like everybody else. But that also means that you are also good, and there's good things that you do like everybody else. And that instead of trying to be exceptional and like losing the idea of exceptionality and accepting the idea of like you are kind of like everybody else, actually reduces a lot of burden on you to try to be exceptional all the time. And so that really helped. And I think I also just looked at myself. Like I started to like key back into something that I had felt as a kid, but I hadn't really put words around. And it was once I started processing my cancer treatment, which I didn't do until I was like 24, 25.
And how old were you when you had cancer?
I was 3.5 to 6.
Oh,
and
years.
So
wow.
It was like all my first memories and it was very traumatic, and I just hadn't dealt with it. But there was a window of time after I'd gone through some therapy, post the suicide, gone through some stuff with me and my family. I started getting really emotional, just even like seeing things about cancer, hearing things about cancer. I was like, oh, I think this is just coming up at this time in my life. And as I was processing some of that stuff, I got to this point where I was, again, like embracing how magical it was that I survived cancer, and that was also my struggle to own. That like now I can say, no, that was actually very hard. Going through cancer was very scary and very hard and very traumatic, and I can say that without feeling weird about it. I can own that, and then also go back into like kind of the joy I feel about the fact that I am alive every day, and that I do feel really, really genuinely, authentically grateful for the fact that I get to do things like this and meet really incredible people, and that each day I have is another opportunity to do that. But I couldn't key back into that kind of joy until I addressed some of my admittance about how hard it was to go through. And I think one other thing my therapist helped me understand too is like the difference between jealousy and envy, and that jealousy tends to be like, you have a thing I want, and I want to take it from you so that I can have it. It's like there's a third entity that is the thing that gets taken, whether that's a person or an experience or whatever. But envy is more like, you have a thing that I wish I had deeply. I really wish I had that. And instead of taking it from you, I just also want it myself.
Yeah.
And it's sort of tied to this like ache of wanting. And I had to go through like, where did I feel envy growing up? Envy that I thought I wasn't allowed to feel, which I think goes back into the religious thing. Like when we were kids, you weren't allowed to feel certain ways because they weren't acceptable, and I think being jealous or envy or whatever, all those very human feelings felt out of bounds in terms of what was acceptable. And once I embraced like, oh yeah, actually growing up around everyone with dads was really hard for me growing up, even though I love my mom and my grandmother who raised me. When other people did stuff with their dads when I was a kid, I was so envious.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to lose their dad. I just wanted one so bad. So being able to admit that openly and like grapple with that and be like, actually, that's a huge part of my life, was envy of people with fathers, or, envy of people who had resources I didn't have, or didn't have to deal with some of the health things, those type of things. And accepting that was a part of being human, I think, led me to this like stepwise way of healing into where I am now, where I'm still working on it. But yeah.
It's amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go if you want.
So it's amazing how basic, like, just examining your feelings and investigating and being like, okay, what does this teach me about my desires and and where my heart really, like what my dreams are, like that's what's on the, the other, or, stuff like that. But it's so hard to get there, and like for everyone, like that's like a really kind of a novel thing, even though it feels so basic to us at this point in our life, it's like,
but I think
wild.
like part of that, and I say this when I was practicing therapeutic work, doing therapy work with people, and in my own life, it's like engaging in what I would call radical self-acceptance and love. And it sounds silly, but it is important. Like, it has to feel radical to you. Like what you were saying, like it's novel. It has to feel like, this is so crazy. Like the amount of self-acceptance and love I'm allowing feels novel and insane. It feels like too much because we've been conditioned to believe that accepting the feelings we have and our desires and our wants and acknowledging them at all, whether or not we act on them, is not okay. It's like against
magnify
norm,
them
or
in some way.
or it'll like hurt other people or somehow get in the way of other people. And it's like, no, just acknowledging the truth of who you are and what you want and why you want it is important. What you do about it is then the next phase of it, right?
Can we circle back, because I mean, share as much or as little as you want, but you talked about losing your first love. How old were you when that happened?
I was 19.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Like my cousin, who I'm probably the closest to in my family, she lost her, well, maybe not first love, but boyfriend when she was 22. Just like a wild thing to go through mentally at that age. How did that, you two were together when it happened? Like as in coupled?
Yes and no. So we were together, and then we kind of, things deteriorated. His mental and emotional well-being deteriorated. And so he was just like really struggling, disconnected from everyone. And then right before his death, he was like, we're going to be together. We're going to be together forever. The day of his death, he saw me and said very similar things. So it was very confusing. And I kind of felt like, I remember I wrote a lot of poems about this too. Like I felt like I was watching someone like burrow a very deep hole in like very sticky mud. So it wasn't just like the earth. It was like the most difficult terrain of Earth, to use a D&D thing. And I was like leaning over with my hand outstretched, and I kept leaning, and I'm like trying to find all these things to lash my feet to the earth above, just to like lean further into this chasm. And I felt like he never chose to take anyone's hand, not just mine, out of that chasm. And so, yeah, it has altered my entire life. I will say, like, that particular experience changed my entire life. And I actually ended up moving to Africa when I was 21. And that also changed my entire life.
Every new fact of your life is like, we could do a whole episode just on that one sentence.
Yeah, but I think like a lot of what led me to Africa was like accepting the healing that I was able to accept at the time after his death. But I would say that is a lifelong, that it will be a lifelong grief that I will process. I think a lot of people are like, I need to get past this loss. I need to get past this grief. And I just don't think that that's how grief works. I think we actually don't get past big losses like that. I don't think there's such a thing as past. I think I learn how to live with the reality of it in my life now. Just like any other thing, like when people have any other neurodivergent experience, when you're seriously anxious, when you have autism, when you deal with ADHD, you're not like, I'm getting over it. You're like, I'm learning how to live a life that's healthy, functional, and full of joy and richness with it. Not despite it, but with it, like an acceptance of it. And I think that's what I've learned in the loss of that relationship is, and I remember even saying it then, I was like, this will be for the rest of my life. I will like love and mourn this person in whatever way that looks like until I no longer live in this existence.
Yeah. Did you find out that he died that day? Like you said you'd seen him that day.
So I'd seen him that day. Sorry, I hope that didn't mess up.
No, you're good.
I had seen him that day, and then it was that night that he ended his life. And I received a call from my friend who his family had been trying to call me, but I had been up studying. And so I turned my phone on silent. So for years, I refused to turn my phone on silent at all because I was like, I might miss some scary phone call. And so, yeah, it was very, very rough. So I got the call late, like 2 a.m. the next morning.
Had you had any kind of, not that you can ever expect that kind of thing, but was it something you could have ever imagined happening?
It's so interesting when we talk about suicide in particular, because I think there's so many unique things about suicide as a loss that makes it different from other death and other losses in some ways. My childhood best friend's sister had died in a car accident when we were 10, very suddenly. And like I've had other friends in my life who have died in car accidents. Like another friend of mine when I was growing up, her entire family except for her sister, they all died in a car accident when we were young. You know, it's just like big losses, I think, are all very unique and tragic and hard. But suicide is specifically unique compared to everything else. But now in my life, and as I got older, the signs were there. And that was one of the first things I figured out after was what signs I didn't know and understand, which were when people seem like they're getting better, when people are like seem happier and they're kind of like, oh, they're turning a corner. That's usually once they've made a decision that they're going to end their life and they're feeling much better about that decision. And they are at peace because that's just the decision they've made.
So that's typical for there to be like a period of happiness almost before they do it?
Very, very,
People
very
often like give big gifts and do big gestures.
give all their things away.
It's wild that like experiencing that period of happiness, there's not like a desire to keep going because of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I understand
I think the mental and emotional thing that goes on there, because I've now worked with a lot of people who have been in suicidal situations since, is freedom. You're free.
Yeah.
And so you've let go, you've made a decision. You've made the decision that your unwell state of being has decided is best. And so in your continually unwell state of being, that's ultimate freedom because the decision's been made. And you're like, you know what? All the pain I feel now is about to end and it's soon. So now I can let go. And you see a lot of like giving away all your stuff. Very generous. Like he was giving away stuff. He was so happy. And it was jarring. It was jarring how happy he was because he had been suffering for months and months and months and months.
Is it a kind of mania, like that state, or?
I would actually say active suicidality is, I think you could compare it neurologically. I would have to look it up more closely, but there is some similarities between like a manic episode in that way, in that you're not connected to the full reality of things. At least I know when people are experiencing there's a difference between non-suicidal self-injury, suicidal ideation, and active suicidality. But when you're actively suicidal, you lose focus of everything else. It is like
increasing like tunnel vision.
100%. That's what it is. And I think that you also are engaged in a way of reasoning that is not tied to reality either. So like, yes, I think it's comparable to mania in the fact that like you're just not tied to the other tenets of reality in the world external to you. You're only living in the world that is real to your mind at that moment and in that crisis. And that's why I think the top thing for people who are experiencing that is to, first of all, let someone else know and to not be alone until you can get help. Those are like the top two things. It's like if someone is saying to you, whether they are like serious or not, if someone says to you like, I'm going to end my life, I enter into the exact same protocol every single time, no matter what's going on, no matter any of the other factors. I'm like, okay, here are our options. It's boiled down to 2. I will stay with you, and I'll stay with you till we've decided. You can go to the hospital. I can take you to the hospital. or we can call someone to get you the help you need, and I will physically stay with you until any of those things are done, until I know you are physically safe.
This is a bit of a tangent, but as you're a mental health professional, I'm just kind of curious to hear what you would say about it. It seems like it's such a common thing, particularly in abusive relationships, but not strictly, where people will threaten to end their lives if you leave. How do you deal with that? Because it seems like that, like, I will stay with you is pretty...
It's actually
Perfect
really good.
question.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of comorbidity with that behavior, right? And severe manipulative abusive behavior. And a lot of times, what you have to do in that situation is remove the emotion from it, from your side. Very hard to do. The reality is that people will threaten to end their lives in a manipulative abusive dynamic. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And what I do then is say, what I would recommend is, first of all, get help on your end. So if you're like, this person threatened to end their life, what am I going to do? Call someone who you think could help. Like, I know in my life, I would happily be that person. Then I will talk to that person. And I will be the one that's like, sounds like you said you're going to end your life. Here are your choices.
So you, the person who's in that complicated dynamic, should try to pass it on to a more neutral...
Yeah, I would do that. And then I myself, if possible, would then try to remove emotion from it on my end.
Yeah.
So if you are the person in the abusive dynamic and someone's saying, you're going to leave me, fine, I'll kill myself. You say, oh, okay, then I'm going to ignore the you're going to leave me part of that sentence. I'm only going to focus on I'm going to kill myself. And I literally go into, it's almost like a robotic protocol of like, okay, you said you're going to kill yourself. Here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to call the hospital for you, or I'm going to drive you to the hospital. And if they're like, well, and if they try to turn it back to, well, you said you were going to leave me, or you said this, and they try to make it very emotional, I try to remove as much emotion from the response as possible. Well, I'm actually not talking about that. I'm going to the thing you said. You said you were going to kill yourself, so we're going to address that first. Because you staying alive is more important than anything else. So let's address that.
And is not related to me being with you
Has
or
nothing
not.
to do with me being with you or not.
Brilliant.
Nothing.
Yeah.
You said you were going to kill yourself. I'm going to take that seriously. I'm going to take it as seriously as it requires, which is as serious as possible. The most serious situation I can be in with someone is for them to say they're going to kill themselves. That means I take it seriously, like their life is going to end. And it is me and them or their life ending. I take it seriously. And I don't take it seriously like get overly emotional. I take it seriously as like, I'm going to do what it takes to make sure your life doesn't end. So then I might say something like, do you need me to, who am I going to call? The hospital? I don't like calling the police, but if it's a person who's being manipulative in that way, I might be like, okay, let's call the police then. You said you're going to kill yourself, so I'm taking you seriously. And a lot of times those people might be like, well, no, and they try to find another way to manipulate
I was just trying to manipulate you. I was
That's the thing, because there's times when you know that they're just saying it and there's no real risk, but it's hard because you also don't want to bet on that.
Right, and you don't want to be stuck in a situation where you weren't, because sometimes they will harm themselves too. Or right before someone, oftentimes when someone's starting to kill themselves, they're also very violent, could be very violent toward you. So the top things you have to do is try to find safety. And it's for both parties, actually. So it's you saying, okay, you said you're going to kill yourself, then I'm going to call someone who can address that, or I'm going to address that with you. And then I'm going to leave so that I myself am safe because this is an unsafe environment.
I've noticed a common thing in a lot of really intense codependent dynamics is the sort of caretaker person in the pairing feeling like the other person will end their life if they stop providing the same amount of caretaking.
100%.
Whether or not that's even being said or,
100%. And I think a lot of people get away with that. A lot of people get away with I could talk about like abuse dynamics forever.
Me too.
Because like that is like, I was in a very short, brief abusive dynamic myself, but I also have worked with survivors of abuse for many years. And it cannot be overstated how important it is to know yourself and know what safety feels like. And if you don't know what that feels like, the moment you get any sort of internal inkling that something isn't safe, you need to listen to it. And I would say, the problem with people who put these like threats in place is that there also is a lot of potential for violence in other ways. Mentally, emotionally, obviously, that's probably already happening. But when we get into physical, it's like if someone's also willing to say, I'm going to kill myself, and look, I have the knife, you don't know that they're also not going to be doing that to you. Which in that case, it's like, okay, this person is very dangerous, so that your top priority is safety. How do I get myself to safety? How do I create some sort of safe barrier between me and this person? And of course, you don't want to leave them alone if they're threatening to end their own life, but there are ways to create distance, like in the physical space. Like, okay, I'm going to actually go stand right over here. I'm going to watch you from this distance, and I'm going to call someone else, whether that's a friend, whether that's a family member, whether that's a professional, I'm going to call. The team that I usually recommend people call is the Mobile Crisis Outreach Unit, which, if people don't know what that is, there's a unit for mental health specifically that is the Mobile Crisis Outreach Team. And they, at least I know in Utah, they exist. Like, I know the University of Utah has it. You can call a Mobile Crisis Outreach Unit that's not the police, that is the medical professional, and say, I have someone who's threatening to end their life, and they need help right now. This is the address.
I really like your advice. I like how you said you almost go into a robotic mode.
Yeah.
That rings true as being the best thing.
Yeah, because like in a healthy relationship, I've experienced both sides of this where, when you can see that the other is getting to a place that's really difficult and being like, hey, listen, as someone who loves you deeply, like, I'm not qualified to help you with what we're dealing with. I think it's time to see somebody else, to talk to someone, to, get help. And like I said, that's feels like a healthy way to approach those areas where you're not like building this increasing codependent dynamic and going into that mud spiral together.
You can't follow them down.
Right.
Following them down puts you both down there. You have to stay. Yeah, and I had a refugee client once who, like, he had experienced a lot of violence in his life, and so, like, he used violence as in language and as a way of getting attention and getting his needs met, which I can't particularly blame him for. But he would threaten suicide all the time, and then people would freak out. And so I was just like, he's like this super tall, huge dude, and I was just this little kid, and I was just like, hey, okay, like, I heard you said you're feeling like you want to end your life. That's a hard place to be. Let's talk about what's next. Here's the steps. And he would be like, well, I'm going to kill myself. It would be like 3 or 4 iterations of screaming about it until I'd be like, okay, same response every time. And he'd get mad about that too. And then eventually he said, oh, I'm not actually going to kill myself. I said, whether or not you are, I'm going to do the same thing every single time. Whether or not you're serious, whether or not you're not serious, whether you don't know if you're serious, doesn't matter. The response is the same. You said these words, I'm going to take you at face value. You said this, I'm going to do this.
I think being willing to enforce that repetition, even in like, just sort of like lower level toxic relationship dynamics where it's like an unhealthy codependence, but it's not necessarily violent or anything. I think just reinforcing that is so good, because I think a lot of the time people will arm themselves with like some new approach or skill or tool, or maybe their therapist has said this is what you're going to do, but then you're going to be met with pushback, and it's pretty hard to just keep laying down the law 5 times in a row. But I do feel like
when people think that they're not being empathetic,
like
I'm not being warm, I'm not being soft, it's like the kindest thing you can do for someone in a crisis is stay consistent.
What are you, a heartless robot? You're just gonna throw me off on someone else.
It's so easy to get sucked in, because they will just start like throwing stuff out to try and make you emotional.
But the thing that actually is going to help you be able to be that person is to have self-confidence.
Yeah.
And when you're in an abusive dynamic, they're tearing down your self-confidence often in many ways, consistently. Like, oh, that's a Jennica thing to do. Oh, stupid Jennica thing. Oh, you really said that? Like tiny, tiny things that tear down your sense of self, so that when you get into the situation where you need to stand your ground in terms of emotional safety or safety with the other person, you can't. Because you doubt yourself so much. That's why the most important thing you can do is be in a space where you have no doubt about you. You can't doubt you when you're trying to help someone who's all over the place or going into a realm that you can't follow. you have to you have to have your own sense of self.
It's
And
really
if
so similar
someone
to
is like
parenting.
if someone is starting to tear down your sense of self, even in small joking ways,
I'm glad you brought the small ways up. That feels
Yeah.
like the
It's
tip of an
everything.
iceberg thing, and it is amazing how common
Yeah, the
everything.
contempt.
it is. Like you can see like couples sometimes that like put each other down, or usually like a guy putting down his wife or whatever. It's like
I won't.
I just want to
Skin crawling, yeah.
Well, and I
shrivel
used
up
to be
and-
the type of person who let that happen all the time until I was in a really serious relationship where this person tore down my complete sense of self and self-esteem all the way to below what I thought was possible, where I couldn't even trust. I was like, I can't go grocery shopping. I don't know how to do things anymore. I'm not capable because I'm an idiot. And, you know, it took serious work and time to get back to this place even, and I still struggle with some of the leftovers of that trauma. But I will say that that is your number one thing you have to protect. So now when I'm around people who even make like belittling jokes, even in friend situations, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't like that type of joke. Nope.
Yeah.
That's like not the type of joke I want to be a part of. I want to hear. I'm not here to belittle people. I think we can tease each other.
I was going to say, it's so obvious when something's like a loving tease, being like, oh, I'm recognizing this like neurotic habit you have, but I love you for it.
peculiarity that I delight in.
Yes.
Like
Versus-
I'm noticing.
Yeah.
There's a difference between noticing someone and putting them down. And it really builds. Because if you're around someone every day, like if they're your partner and you're with them all the time and you like do this thing cooking and then they're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's a you thing.
Even just like
It's like
being
not funny.
I really relate to that from growing up. Like even if you're just energetically getting like feedback a lot over tiny things, it really just wreaks complete havoc on your nervous system.
It's exhausting. And I do see it really couples who I would say are happy, who are in what I would call emotionally heightened relationship, meaning the only way that they can pay attention to each other's needs is if it comes from a place of heightened emotional salience. And I think that's also not something I want to engage in. I was just thinking about this just a couple days ago. Like sometimes even in friendships or in any relationship, it's like the only way I can get you to listen to my needs is if I'm really upset.
This is so
But I
funny
would
that-
like to be able to communicate my needs without being upset and you to think that to take them just as seriously as you would if I was crying. But I think sometimes that's not the way people function. But what I notice is that's like a heightened nervous system situation that I choose to opt out of now in my life. I don't want to engage in relationships that require me to be at a really heightened nervous system situation in order to be seen or heard, or to think that my feelings are valid because I'm not. My feelings are valid if I communicate them calmly. If I was here sitting calmly with you and I said, actually, that thing that was just said really made me upset, I would expect people to be, I would hope, the people around me to be like, oh my God, she's really upset. Yeah, she's really upset. And then say, okay, what can we do to help? Or do you need space? But if I'm not like crying, yelling, screaming, really upset, do you take me as seriously? And I think like that's another thing I'm noticing about people in relationships is that they're often engaging with each other in heightened emotional states, which to me also means heightened nervous system response, which is more cortisol. Like, and I'm just like,
It's so funny that you're saying
I'm
you were
off the
thinking-
cortisol.
exactly.
I was literally thinking about this in the last few days. Like how many times when we don't feel like our feelings are valid, like to ourselves, we kind of are doubting their validity, or, there's like some uncertainty in us around like whether we deserve to feel them or deserve to be cared about in them, how we magnify them when we bring them to others, because but it's really coming from that place of not. It's just so funny that you said you were thinking about that a few days ago.
Totally. Literally 2 days ago,
I was like thinking about that a few days ago too, and I was like, how do I want to like communicate this in some way? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that because I do think that. Sorry.
Oh no, you're so good.
Stop you. I do think that again, this all goes back to that same thing. Like if you pay attention to yourself, that's why I'm saying radical self-love and radical self-acceptance. Because if you can sit in a space where you're like, how do I feel? And what feels right in that expression? Because actually, if I can start from a place of equilibrium, if I can start from a place of like, I'm very centered. I know me. I trust me. The person I trust more than anybody is me. Then the minute something comes up, I can be like, gosh, I didn't like that. What didn't I like about it? Okay, And then I can communicate that from a place that's still safe for me. My internal world has to be a place of safety before I can really ask anybody else to create an external world of safety for me. And I can't trust that anybody else can or will.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault. That's not a negative. It's that I can't rely on someone else's existence, their internal world, their relationship with themselves, and the way they relate to the world to provide me with the safety that I'm asking for, that I need in my own being. So I have to curate it in my own being. And then when an environment doesn't suit that, when I feel like it's not right, I just need to bow out of it for the time being, or I need to make decisions that then maintain my sense of internal safety.
Yeah.
But it is a hard thing to do and to learn. And it's hard when you have great friends that you love, but you're like, actually, there's a chaos here emotionally that is decentering for me that I don't want to be a part of. I love you, but I don't want to be a part of that thing, that way of communicating.
Yeah, that's been big for me this year. And I do think it's like very insidious, and the impact of people not cultivating that sense of safety within themselves and then feeling like they need to like magnify feelings of blame or like a victim story, when it's like, no, your original feelings are so valid. It's so valid that you felt that way, but it's so human to almost like feel like we have to embellish to be valid.
We also get rewarded in society by it. I wanted to hear what you were going to say, and then I can go on to my next thing.
Please finish what you're saying.
Okay, because I was even talking with another friend about this, like, your friend, let's say your friend is having a difficulty with their partner, and then they come to you, and the story is just like so intense and emotional. They're like, can you believe it? And like, drama, we all love a little drama, but I actually think the world that we live in right now is very hard. I think the country we live in right now is very hard. So my amount of space I have for drama is very low.
Yeah.
It's very limited. I'm like, I don't want drama in my personal life. But even my friends who like exist in this way of what you're talking about, it's like they have to like raise the stakes and make it super emotional and super dramatic. It's like,
and often without realizing it, I think, as well.
100%.
It's just like you're abandoning yourself first and foremost, and so you're just kind of naturally.
Yes. And then you're like, well, they'll only care about my side, or they'll only take my side or my story if the story is dramatic.
Yeah, and if there's sort of a clear blame story as well, when actually in a lot of situations there's so much,
I would say like a good proportion of relationship stuff that happens between people is completely two-sided.
100%.
Like a good portion of it.
Like
now,
everything's
there are things
co-created.
People have done. I would say some behaviors person A did weren't awesome and probably weren't there. They weren't at their best. And then I would say a lot of things person B did also weren't at their best. But then how they go about and spread the story to try to get people on their side is very interesting. When what really could happen is like just go with your original feelings and be like, this thing hurt me, and maybe in your head the next sentence is, and I know it's unreasonable, but you cut that part out. You just say, this thing hurt me, because like actually your feelings aren't unreasonable. You might feel like they are, or like maybe your reaction was a little bit intense.
Yeah, but you had the reaction you had, and
you
that's
had the
valid.
reaction you had. Like, we need to let ourselves be human first, so that then we can also let the people around us be human second, I think this happens a lot in dynamics with heterosexual dynamics. It's like women, it's like you need to be a perfect victim. And also I think women I've noticed or observed, like, have this sense of other men in particular might blame you as being equally toxic. Like, well, you're just in a toxic relationship. The two of you are toxic. It's just toxic dynamic. You're just not right for each other. And it's like, well, true. That's true. But also, the reality is that there are systems of power that exist in relationships. So if you are physically not as strong as one person is physically not as strong, one person is financially less capable. It's how you move through the world and how you have to live in your own body. And so if one person is existing in a system with more power pieces in their existence than the other person, they are still at a disadvantage in the relationship, because women don't feel safe enough to leave if they don't have these other elements, right? When they're up against a man who has a lot of these other pieces. That being said, when it comes to just an argument, you're both probably going to have contributed in ways. And what's hard is in the victim line of things, now this could be any type of relationship, if one person is threatening in any way, shape, or form, the other person has to give in a little bit, right? Like what we talked about with the suicide thing, or one person is being, like if one person is pacing around the room aggressively and you don't know if they're going to physically hurt anybody, physically destroy the space, hurt you, hurt your animals, whatever, and you're just like trying to mitigate that, you will engage in behaviors that other people might be like, well, you shouldn't have done that. And it's like,
yeah, well,
yeah, well, when I'm maybe facing getting hit or getting, or even threatening to be hit, like, or he pulls out a knife, like, you don't know. And that's the problem, is when you are in an unsafe environment, you just have to prioritize safety. And sometimes you will do things that feel like you contributed, but it's like, but you're also at risk. You're in a really unsafe environment. And so I think that's the thing I tell friends in my life and people I know who come to talk to me about abusive dynamics. It's like, pay attention early on to safety. Because it's not just, am I physically safe? It's, do I feel safe in this conversation? We could be sitting in the car, which also isn't a very safe environment, by the way. If someone's driving a car and you're in it with them and they're not in a safe conversation with you, or emotionally they're heightening, that's very unsafe. So it's like, be in a public space. But even if you're in a space where you feel like there's actually no room for your emotions to exist at all, that's not safe. Like, just label it as unsafe, Like, if someone is like, well, I have all these emotions and they exist and I have a lot of things I have to deal with and they're going to take up the entire room. And if you even bring up your emotions, I'm going to see that as offensive. That's a problem.
yeah.
That's a problem. And that doesn't just happen in romantic relationships.
No, this is what I was going to say earlier, is so many people learn that even in childhood, like their parents are their first bullies. You can't do this right. It's your fault for this.
Exactly.
And then you grow up with this just normalcy around self-betrayal. And if you also have a thing about perfectionism and trying to appear nice, and sometimes you can get just pushed to an edge because you've just learned self-betrayal so much, and then finally get to a point where it's just like, the breaking point.
Yes.
And,
I think growing up with a single parent, I don't know if you experienced this, but like, because she didn't have someone else to put her emotion stuff into, we carried a lot of it. And even now in my adult life, I carry stuff for her often. And my mom and I, we talked about therapy a while ago, and I was like, it's great to have a therapist too, because it's just another person who can hold on to some of your stuff and help you process your stuff, because you don't have a lot of other people to do. You don't have a partner. And not that your partner should have to process all your stuff either, because ideally your partner is a also centered human being, and you're coming together and choosing to do things together, and it's a healthy exchange and you enjoy it. It's not finally the person who I can tell all my problems to and they hold it all and handle it all.
Or fix it.
That's not a relationship. It is a relationship, but it's not a healthy one. But I think what happens also for kids who grow up with single parents, at least my experience with other people too, and mine was like, my massive capacity, however big it is, holds my mom's stuff. And I feel like I have to do that, because who else will? If not me, who? And I think, we love that person. And she's not even doing it on purpose. It's not even but it is not healthy. It is, and then as an adult, you have to set those boundaries and I think boundaries have become really messed up in the fake mental health social media world. But the reality is, like, boundaries are supposed to be created in you, for you. They're not created to this person. It's more like, what I've reached my limit of how much I can hear this story or how much I can hold in this situation. I will do what I can to show you I love and support you. And I listened for 2 hours, and then I'm just going to hope that things work out, and I'm going to send my best to you or try to give you whatever resources I can. But the next time we talk about it, if I feel like it's just to rehash what we just talked through, that's not going to work super well for me, because that puts me in a situation where I feel kind of overwhelmed, or it puts me in a situation where I want to engage in my previous behavior, which is fix everything for you, drop all my own needs to fix your stuff. And that's not a place I want to put myself in. So I'm going to create a boundary within me to just like gently not be a part of whatever that is until we can find a different way to communicate. But hopefully the people in your life can communicate safely with you around that stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But it's so tough because you're right. We learned all that stuff as kids.
Yeah.
And it is so tough.
And it's radical, like you said, to change those narratives in ourselves, to identify the mechanisms that have grown within us, and to identify them, to learn to work with them while rewriting new things and then stepping into radically different behaviors than what we've done in the past. We just
ruffles feathers. The different behaviors ruffles feathers.
Yeah.
Totally, because if you're suddenly not always accessible for fixing somebody or for being a constant sounding board or whatever, or then it's like, wait, you don't love me, you don't care about me, you're not my friend anymore. It's like, well, or
my love is more expansive now because I have no longer put the conditions on it that meant that I had to self-sacrifice my well-being in order to engage in a loving exchange. But now my loving exchange involves my sense of self and my sense of self-worth. So I'm going to engage in a loving way with the people around me that includes my understanding of my needs. And that's actually more loving because then you can be in a healthy exchange. And if that person feels a void in what they're receiving, then they can go find where to fill that. Therapy, their own self-work, whatever that means. But that is asking the people in your life to do that with you. And sometimes people won't want to, and that means you'll face losses, which is a whole other part of, I think, growing and being an adult that is really hard, is realizing when you have to let go of closeness. Doesn't necessarily mean relationships completely, but closeness.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time thinking about sort of low-level emotional abuse that's kind of normalized in our society, like essentially just relationships where one person's feelings tend to matter or take center stage over the other. And something that I think is challenging is how it's like we so want, like, the sort of victim-villain paradigm, I just feel like is so often unhelpful, especially when talking about like more low-level stuff. But I don't know how we really get around that. Because it's like the minute you sort of bring in the word abuse, the conversation like has a certain quality to it, and it's not. To me, we often so easily get away from the fact that it's like these are two people who both matter, who are co-creating this dynamic together. Again, I'm obviously not talking about situations where there's genuine safety concerns and all that, but
I think a really great way to frame some of that thinking or how to think about that is with friendships. Because I think that in romantic relationships, it gets stickier for people to understand. But I think can be clarity about exactly what you're talking about in a friendship. I chronically got into relationships where my needs had no place. Like I never even said what I thought or felt. People I even had friends in the past be like, I don't even know how you feel about things because you don't ever say. It's always me. Like I centered the other person. And I got into relationships where that was the dynamic and that worked for the other person because that was what they wanted.
And I'm assuming on some level you're subconsciously seeking out that because that's what you're comfortable with, that's what's familiar.
1,000%.
So in that sense, it is like a 50-50 thing, even though your feelings deserve to matter and they're not. But it's still like a dynamic that is co-created.
Exactly. And I will say I willingly walked into those relationships and loved those relationships, except when my feelings weren't understood ever. And I would go home and I'd feel alone, resentful, suicidal, whatever it was, because I had no place to put my feelings because my friends in those situations, not unparticularly fault of their own, it was co-created by both of us. Were in that dynamic where I was like, only your feelings matter and I'll center you in my life. They became more important to me, and how they felt and what they were going through was more important to me in many ways than what I was going through. And part of it was an avoidance of what I was going through, which I think also has become normalized in society.
And especially for femme people, I feel.
100%. you leave and avoid your things through productivity. You avoid your things through centering other people. You avoid your things through all the millions of distractions that are available to you at any given moment, at any time. TV, phone, listening to stuff. Like, even, I think I told you this on our retreat too, like, music can be a distraction. Anything that gets you to not pay attention to yourself, you will do. And we are totally encouraged through capitalism and through society as it is designed to be doing that. Don't ever just listen to you, which I think also goes all the way back to the religion thing. Like, don't ever just pay attention to you. Like, what would it be like to sit with yourself?
Yeah.
A lot of poets and writers from back in the day talk about curating solitude, and I believe curating solitude is one of the things that saves us in this world.
1000%.
Like, being able to know what it means to sit with me in a place that feels safe. Sit in safety with myself alone. What is that feeling? What does that mean? And we don't know that. We haven't been taught that. That is not the way society works. That's not the way family systems often work, especially if you're in a bigger family, it's even harder because there's so many competing needs and voices. But I will say, I willingly went into these friendships, and they were great because I could avoid my stuff, I could center their stuff until something happened. Then something bad happened in my life, and I had no space to process it in myself, and I had no relationship that could help me hold it because they didn't want to. And then I'd go to them and be like, I'm going through this really hard thing that's really hard for me to manage, and I'm no longer, not only am I not able to hold your stuff, I need help holding my stuff.
But you don't have the social infrastructure of having built that trust and openness and two-way communication.
Or those other people are like, what the hell? You're a bad friend now.
Yeah.
You're acting
You're
totally
changing the
different.
Acting so weird.
Uncharacteristic.
You were my good friend, and now you're awful. And you're annoying, and you're hard to be around, and you're burdensome. And, then the burden narrative is the thing that I believed my whole life. You're right, I am a burden. The reason my mom gave me away is because I was a burden, which isn't actually how I feel about my mom anymore. I have this whole healing thing that I went through about adoption after my cancer stuff. But I will say that that all led to the absolute implosion or dissolution of those friendships.
And something I find fascinating is often that other side, those types who are the ones sort of demanding to be center stage. In other relationships, they potentially are more reciprocal.
Totally.
But it's like they've met you and got to know you through the lens of like, she doesn't really have needs. And it's so subconscious. They're not obviously thinking about it like that.
Any of those people are bad people. I would never label any of those friends of mine as bad people. They're great. I love them still to some degree. But I also recognize that their inability to place value in my needs in the relationship just doesn't work for me. I need relationships that are reciprocal. I really do. And I know that. There are some, I think they're on different levels, and I think it changes with time. Like, sometimes you need more from your friends and sometimes you need less. Like, I'm in a period of life right now where I'm doing well. And so, like, I can give a lot more to my friends and they might need more. Like, I've had friends who've had serious losses in the last year, even the last month. And I'm like, here, take all the time and space you need. I don't need the time and space right now, but there will be a time that I do. And I need to know that you're willing to also be there present, that you have the capacity to. That's the other thing, is sometimes people don't know how to do that. That isn't something they've learned because they haven't dealt with themselves oftentimes. It's that they're like, everything's chaos in their life or everything is loud for them. And so they have to be in relationships where they can take center stage because they haven't learned how to curate some sense of centeredness in themselves to cope with some of their stuff. Like, some of my friends who are in that situation have never gone to therapy themselves, or they're like, I'm tough. I just toughed it out. I'm like, okay. Like, that's the narrative you want to go with, but it's not benefiting your relationships. It's hard to have rich, full relationships full of people. Like, some of those people in my life are also the type of people who are like, I only need one friend. I'm like, actually.
Oh, dear. I'm a rich ecosystem fed by many
Same.
streams.
I'm like, I need many, many, many people, and at different times and for different reasons and different seasons of me, different seasons of life, and like how beautiful to have a community. But you can't live in that ecosystem if you can't feed yourself and pay attention to yourself and then create distinctions of when your needs, when it works and when it doesn't work. And that doesn't mean it won't work forever. It just means it doesn't work right then. But I think you're right. Like these low-level unhealthy dynamics, both parties want that.
It's selfish on both sides. You know, both people are kind of using the other to be able to self-abandon.
I agree.
Also, you know, when you meet those people and they're going through a really crazy time and you get to know them in that time and they're telling you like, this is a particularly crazy time in my life. And then the longer you're friends with them or know them, you're like, oh, they're always going through a really crazy, chaotic time.
I've actually created a like just internal listening thing for me when I meet people where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna like observe. Like I don't have an obligation to anyone and no one has an obligation to me. And that's okay. That's another thing we have to become okay with. Is like if I move through the rest of my life and I spend years of my life alone, would I be okay with that? And the answer really does have to become yes before you can create relationships that I think are more equitable.
Yeah.
You have to be okay to be like, it's okay if I'm just with me.
Yeah.
It really
you have
is
to be your own
okay.
friend. Like
First.
Yeah.
And then I think like when you look at those types of things, then you can meet someone and be like, they're so fun to be around and I want to be around them in these settings and it's great. But like we probably won't get super close because there's a lot going on with them and the way they process the world and the way they process things going on in their life that feels a little too chaotic for me. But I still want to love them from the distance that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that like context boundaries can be so good. Like there really are people that you love seeing in like a big social setting. But do you want to have an intimate dinner with them every week? Maybe not.
Maybe
Probably
not.
be a bad
and
influence.
our time is our only currency. I believe this very strongly. Time is our only actual currency. So like we have very limited time and there's tons of people. So I think like curate the time with the people that are feeding you and you feel like you're in a really beautiful relationship with as you're in it. And maybe that'll shift too. But like if you're in a healthy relationship with you, then like all of those things could change. Every factor could change and you'd still be okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Beautiful. So, you go.
No. Please.
It's a good conversation.
Yeah, I know. I'm
It's like all we're always talking about, being delivered perfectly.
That's why I knew this would be great.
I know. You were so right. Well, I kind of wanted to try and get back on track with your story because you were talking about how you were reckoning with how much your childhood cancer had affected you.
Yes. Yeah.
How did things play out from there?
Oh,
Went
wow.
to Africa.
Yes,
you
I
went to
lived all over
Africa.
the world working with refugees and immigrants. And when I got my master's, I was focused on complex trauma, global mental health. But my cancer thing was really wild because I just had denied myself the reality of that being my experience. I was like, oh, it was hard for my mom. It really wasn't about me. I had avoided it so heavily. But all the times I've integrated my reality and the pain of my reality, I've been richer for it, I would say, despite how hard it was at the moment. Like, I mean, it was a couple of years of serious grappling. I couldn't even like talk about cancer stuff without it being hard. And then I started to just like let myself relive those memories in safe spaces in the therapist office or let myself journal about it or let myself think about it again. Like, no, that was really hard for me. And I would tell people, yeah, cancer was so traumatic. It was so hard. And it was. It was really hard. I hate that it was my first memories, too. You know, it was hard.
Yeah.
But I'm also really grateful I'm alive because I wouldn't have been. In any other circumstance, I wouldn't have been. So I was able to, like, get through that. And then I started to look at my adoption, which I think is the new thing I'm working on now in terms of the deep stuff. I think the first part of that was acknowledging my mom and realizing that I had another adoptee friend who said once, like, for all the amount of time we think about them, they probably think about us much more. That, like, the woman who birthed you is probably thinks about you every day to some degree. Because the bond that gets created in utero is still very strong, whether or not you stay with that person or not. And babies in their first months of life don't even know that there's a distinction between them and their mother. Right. They don't know that.
Yeah.
They think they're the same thing still. They think they're just like the same being, which they were.
They were, yeah.
But they're just external to them now. Yeah. But they don't understand that there's a distinction. And so being taken from your mother at a young age like that means that you lose yourself, right? You get ripped away from yourself. And so it's so my feeling, my sister has a different feeling than me. But my personal feeling about my adoption is that, like, I was with her and it feels like we were ripped apart from each other. And I'm just always trying to find my way back. But, like, a lot of other adoptees feel like they were abandoned completely. No one was there. And it was just this coldness on the other side. And I feel like with my biological mom, what I have reached now is a state of great empathy for her. Because I can't imagine that situation. First of all, can't imagine being pregnant. Second of all, I can't imagine giving a baby away after I birthed it and carried it around.
Do you know much about the circumstances she was in?
I don't know her name. The only thing I have left of her is the name she gave me, which Anusua is the name my biological mom gave me. But she didn't leave her name. I don't know her age. I don't know where she's from. I don't know anything else about her. She just left me at the orphanage. And so I think, we grow up again in my child mind. My child mind was like, I'm the problem. She abandoned me. But my working through it self and my adult self now is able to say, whatever circumstance she was in, she thought that was the best opportunity for me to survive. Mm-hmm. She was like, I want this baby to survive, so I will put them in this situation. I will go through the grief of losing them to have them survive. It's better to know that they're alive than have them go through whatever could potentially lead to their death here with me. And that, to me, is like such a powerful grief, such a powerful thing that lives in me, and it also is something I relate to and have the deepest empathy for. So now I see my mom as like this woman who loved me enough to try to give me a life that I wouldn't have had. And if I had stayed in India and gotten cancer, I wouldn't have survived, no matter what. So it's like true that like between the actions of my two mothers, I survived. And so I do sort of feel like those two women comprise the fullness of me as a person and my existence, which is why I go by the names they both gave me. Jennica, my adoptive mom, gave me, and Anusua is my biological mom's name that she gave me. And I feel like those like when people ask, like, oh, who are you? What are you? I'm like, oh, I think more than anything, I'm an adopted kid. Like, that's the identity I would claim more than Southeast Asian, mixed race, Middle Eastern, or more than American, or more like it's adoptee feels like the most honest identifying marker for who I am more than anything else because of that experience. And I have reached this sense of like deep love for my biological mom and this sense of like grief for her, for what she probably had to experience. And I don't know what her life was like. And I don't know if she's alive. That is one thing that I still avoid is like finding out any information about her because I like to still live in this like fantasy world that she's still looking for me. She still misses me. Because I miss her and I feel like a longing for her. And I think if she was dead, I'd know. I kind of feel like that. Like if she was dead, I'd know inside, but I don't know.
Is there a way you could know more about her? Like
potentially, yeah. I could like do some of the digging. I did do a DNA test in 2020, and I never opened the side of it that was like find your family, whatever. But it would be hard because if she stayed in India, which she probably did, they'd have to take the DNA test for me to be connected to her,
Right.
So, that's very unlikely.
Yeah.
But
wow.
Yeah, that is the one thing I still avoid is like finding out. But I think in the next few years, I'll try.
Yeah, you can only do what feels right in the moment.
Yeah. It's also life is busy. It's like I'm doing other stuff. So it's like, when do I have the time to meet my mom right now? This, But I think I have friends from India who have wanted to take me back, and I've lived in India since, but not where I'm from. But I do have a really close, wonderful friend who is like, let's go back. And one of her best friends is from the city I was born in and knows it very well. And so my feeling is that when the time is right, I will go back with her my good friend, and then meet her good friend, and she will take me through the city I'm from. And I think that would be a time where I'd have to set aside a month or something and be like, I'm not working. I'm only doing this.
Yeah.
Because whatever comes up, I'm going to have to deal with, which will be a lot of grief, a lot of feelings, a lot of infancy feelings, a lot of things that will come from my years of my life as an adoptee. And like, what if I find her? What if I don't find her? What will I see? Will I see kids that were me? Like, and so I'm going to have to just be like, I'm taking off work.
Yeah.
And I'm taking a
It's a
month
full-time job.
in India to just try to process this.
Yeah.
So when I can do that, I will. I think, like I'm getting closer to being ready for it. There are times when I'm like, okay, I'm ready to do it. There are times when I'm like, that's okay. So I'm getting closer though.
Quite yet.
Yeah. So then, so I kind of explored that, and I got my master's from Johns Hopkins. I was in global mental health and in focus on war-impacted people, so refugees and immigrants. And I was already working with refugees and immigrants. I was already working as a mental health professional with survivors of abuse, specifically children. In my undergrad with my bachelor's of science in psych and international health, and then I got a BFA in music and English literature writing.
Wow.
And then I did a certificate. I was planning on being pre-med. I wanted to be a doctor and work with MSF specifically. I wanted to work like in these really, really severe conflict zones. And then I trained how to do very palliative medical care in conflict zones. And then I lived all over the world working in. So I lived in Africa and then in Asia on the Thai Burma border, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East, working with refugees and immigrants, which was like one of the most rewarding parts of any career I think I've ever had. But I took that and realized that I loved that, but that there were stories that I was witnessing and creating. I was mostly creating interventions and piloting interventions in different settings with different communities around mental health and family mental health, the community level healing, like for child soldiers returning to their communities or whatever it was. I did it with child soldiers, and then I did it with different refugee populations, and then with kids and their parents, and all these different settings. In India, we did it with lowest income SES populations.
SES?
Socioeconomic status, so the lowest income families, trying to bring them into community with each other and bringing them into community with an education and psychosocial education system that could then support their families. In Africa, we did it with kids who were in orphan situations or kids who weren't, to try to like compare and contrast and look at like what does a living situation has an impact. Then we did a study looking at caregivers who were caring for kids who had lost someone due to HIV or AIDS or lost family members because they left, and looking at caregivers' mental health and whether that impacted adolescent mental health and how we could create healing in those environments. So that was a lot of the work I was doing. Worked in the Navajo Nation, looking at like relationships between kids and their parents. So that was really my passion, was with families. And I kind of took that work and was running these psychosocial groups, especially for femme people and families, and was like, wow, there's such beautiful stories coming out of here. I had a group of individuals where most of the individuals were queer, but they had never come out publicly, but they had been tortured for it back in their home countries and then became refugees, but still wouldn't talk about it.
Wow.
And then in these groups, they were finally like, I got a therapist, and I told my family I had a partner, and like absolutely, honestly, like I could die after those things. Like this is what life is about, beautiful moments of healing. And I was just witnessing these moments of healing and people finding community and safety. And I was like, more people need to understand refugees. And like the beauty that I witness in my work, I need people to see it so that we can create a more larger, healthy, safe community.
Especially as there are going to be more and more refugees with the impacts of the climate crisis. There's already are, like, the apocalypse is happening.
1,000%.
It's underway big time.
And it's happening in the U.S. in a very serious way. I was just reading about Miami, right? Like, it's too hot in Miami, so lots of people are either dying, literally just dying, or becoming climate refugees. I think how we deal with infrastructure in this country is creating a lot of migration. And then globally, how we treat the planet is obviously causing swaths of land to not be to be completely uninhabitable, which is wild. And again, like when people are like, that's never going to impact me, I'm like, oh, it is. And your lack of care about it is going to hit you harder.
Yeah.
The lack of awareness about it is going to make it hit you really hard. But, you know, I'm like, okay, here I am working with my Harvard certificate and my degree from Hopkins, from these Ivy League schools where I've been super fortunate to have scholarships to attend. Like, what am I going to do that's going to be good? How am I going to help the world was really what I was saying to myself. I'm like,
Go on Zelf on the Shelf podcast.
Exactly. Ew. I'm like, how am I going to make impact knowing my lived experiences and the empathy and heart I have and the skills I've curated? And then like this massive amount of incredible people whose stories aren't getting told. And I was like, I feel like my daily job is to humanize and rehumanize people to one another over and over and over. And my goal in the work I do, no matter what that work actually looks like day to day, is that humanizing work so that we reach a place where there's no distinction in our humanness. You are as human as I am human, and that matters. That's all that matters, is that our humanness has no distinction. Our lived experiences, our bodies, our beings are, yes, all distinct, but our humanness is not. And then extending that to our loved creatures also matter just as much. Our plants, they matter just as much. Like, all things that live are connected. So I was like, how do I do this at the level where I feel like it can actually make impact? Because I was also hitting like lack of upward mobility in my organization. I was running into trouble where I was working at a nonprofit where, you know, the CEO was making over $1 million a year while the people who were really on the ground working, a lot of interpreters were making $15 an hour, and there was no equity in pay. There was no, like, he got a raise in 2020, no one else did. Like, I was dealing with the ugly side of nonprofit work, and I was...
Unfortunately too common.
Yes, it's like, you know, you hit capitalism. Suddenly, here you are trying to do good work, but you're also in a capitalist society, and people are taking advantage of it, you know, and that sucks. I'd rather be fighting the capitalist machine in a different way than trying to be in it in a nonprofit where I feel like people aren't really getting the help they need because money's being prioritized over people. So I'm like, what do I do? So I went back into neuropsychiatric research, and I did psilocybin-assisted therapy research, and I just was like exploring different ways.
Was that part of the John Hopkins ones, or was it something else?
No, it was at the U, actually. I had come back to Utah. I'd been living overseas. I came back to Utah pandemic time and went through a whole other life experience, which was getting divorced. My spouse had an affair. Like, I had been married. There's a whole other part there. But
we'll just do little bookmarks for future episodes.
Yes. But I was working for the nonprofit and running mental health programs, getting multi-million-dollar grants, all that stuff. And then in Utah, an opportunity opened up for me to join a neuropsychiatric lab and to also do this side project, which was psilocybin-assisted therapy for late-stage cancer patients. And I was like, I gotta leave nonprofit world, and I'm gonna move. And I was still acting, filmmaking, writing in the background. I was still doing theater in the background as my...
Still a concert violinist.
Cute how all of this
I know.
played out.
No wonder
How
I'm
old are you?
single, everybody. No, just kidding. I was doing all that stuff extra in the background, and I was like, I need to turn this and start doing this full time. So I was like slowly disentangling from that. So my job at the lab and my job in this trial were flexible enough hours that I was like, okay, I can still act. But the main thing was that I wanted filmmaking to be a way to keep this humanizing thing going. I was like, how do I elevate the stories I'm hearing here in this group with these really amazing refugee people? How do I get these stories amplified? Where can I tell them at a larger level? And I'm like, filmmaking? I can go back to filmmaking. So that was that turn. So I started turning back to that. And then by 2022, I was full-time filmmaking and part-time doing the other work. So now I still do work at the U. I train doctors and nurses through the sim lab, and I help with some of the simulations I talk about cultural humility in those settings. I still do training with Epoca. I train in the film side around like inclusion of diverse bodies and diverse perspectives in film. So I try to do all that work, and I still try to do mental health adjacent work, but now I'm full-time filmmaking on the other side, acting and filmmaking, with the hope to tell adoptee, refugee stories, with the hope to tell stories where we're humanizing people whose stories aren't getting told, whatever community that is. I think it's important. So.
And so important for someone who has been so involved and is approaching it from such like a humanistic and benevolent lens, because there is also a faction out there that is like, how do we use stories like this to amplify ourselves, to center ourselves, to make a gajillion dollars?
Yes.
They're out there too, and I don't want to name them by name in this video because I don't want to go down that path, but I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Camera.
Tim Ballard.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We could talk endlessly about that too.
Yes. Using vulnerable populations to then elevate yourself and financially reap benefit off of extremely vulnerable children is sick and wrong. It's wrong.
He is truly, I mean, as much as evil exists, it's him.
I agree. It's true evil. But I do think that, I owe so much of like the joy and goodness in my life and the learning I've had from like incredible people, whether that is mentors or people I've learned from directly, whether it was they were in a position to teach me, or like from literally just the everyday people I experienced overseas or in refugee situations. I mean, they taught me more about what it is to be alive and what it is not to inherit suffering as your narrative, but to inherit it as like something to then connect you further to the world around you and to help people understand. Like I have never in my life, like I remember when I was working with refugees, some of the things they'd say, I'm like, is this real? Am I in this room with this person who survived these things and it has like the most beautiful way of looking at the world? And I'm like, that is the thing I think that will heal the world, is that. Whatever that is, however I can distill that and make it louder and make it larger. That's like why I think I'm on earth, is to help people find pathways to healing that create communities and communities where people are loved and safe exactly as they are in the fullness of who they are. And like, I don't think I figured that out yet, but I think I'm on my way to figuring it out.
And part of the conversation of figuring out together, building communities of people who are figuring it out.
Exactly.
And
yeah, because I can't do it alone either. I have no desire to do it alone. But I'm like, whatever reason I survived all the things I survived is to do that. Like I still see so many of these people I lived with and worked with in Africa or Asia or the Middle East or here even, like lost everything. It's a Venezuelan woman who was like, I sent my daughter ahead with all the money I had while I watched the rest of my family members get killed, and I barely got out, and she's wounded, and she's like, but to know that she could survive and live a life and go to school, and then like this woman is here giving me food and giving me things and saying like, I'm just grateful you can sit with me. I'm grateful you can spend time with me. I'm like, that is the most pure thing about being alive, is that thing. Like that we experience a massive amount of wild stuff that sometimes is unfathomable. And yet like, we just want to be with people and love them and give them anything that we can give to make them feel loved. Like that is insane to me, or having like one of our participants in one of our groups was one of these young men from Africa who had been held in a cage for a long time for being a homosexual and had not told anybody, and then was able to escape and kept all of his relationships so private and was so terrified. And then, our very first group, we're talking about what trauma is, and he's like, what is that? Like, explain that to me. And so I'm explaining what trauma is. And then I'm driving him home, and he's crying and crying. He's like, I don't think I can ever come back to this. It's too hard because, hearing about what this is and hearing that I did go through trauma and reliving some of this stuff. He's like, you have no idea what it's like. I'm like, you are under no obligation to ever return to this group. But if you ever want to just call me and I can come sit with you. And then 3 weeks later, he did come back. And then he finished the program, which was an 8-week program. And at the end of the program, he's like, I got a therapist. And I introduced my partner to my family. He's like, this, like, feeling like I had people who liked me for who I was and where I was safe, saved my life, you know, changed my life. And he's like, totally different person. And that wasn't me. It was just, I provided a space for it to happen. And, you know, I have countless stories like that. And I think if I had just like, if that was all my career was, that would have been enough because it was just so impactful. And these people didn't have to share their lives with me, but they did, you know? And so I think at the end of the day, that's why I'm alive, is to amplify whatever that is.
Do you ever struggle with burnout?
Struggle with burnout?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Compassion fatigue.
Compassion fatigue, I wouldn't say now I struggle with that. When I was in working with refugees and immigrants as my 9 to 5, yes. Mostly because the job was putting a lot of pressure on me. It was one of those things where I loved the work, but I kind of hated the job. And it's like you're trying to fit something that is so beautiful and human into a capitalist framework. And so it's all about, like, I was making no money and I was working 60 plus hours a week, you know, and I would be the one at the hospital with people who were suicidal or whatever through the night. If someone had an episode tied to psychosis, I was the one finding them out in the middle of the night on the road and helping them, coaxing them back to a safe environment where they were physically safe, and then getting them into care, or on phone calls all day with care providers and navigating a really, really, really fucked up medical system. And so I think that's when I would experience it. It was also because I was like, I mean, totally transparently in a relationship where the other person was like not at all present to hold my stuff. So if I came home from work exhausted, there was no place for that to go. I would just sit alone and try to process it myself, or not, or avoid it, or whatever, knit and play video games or whatever. And so I think, yes, 100% I did experience that. But it was never really for the situations and the people. It was about the environment that I was like being forced to deal with it in. And you know, even now I like 2 days ago, I was recovering from a trip that I just went on with my wonderful friends, which was so fun, but I needed a whole day of recovery.
Yeah.
I was like, I just need to sleep today and I need to do it without shame. And I like slept and I made some food and I did a tiny bit of work for a couple hours, and then I watched Stranger Things, and then I went on a deep dive around some of the Stranger Things lore and D&D, and then I went back to bed. You know, and I don't feel any guilt or shame about that. Now I'm in a privileged position where I have the opportunity to do that. And I think that's another big part of it, is like in a capitalist society, a lot of people don't have that privilege. You know, I think we often look at people who go through trauma or who traumatize their kids, and we're like, gosh, those people, like, they're unequipped and like, fuck them. But it's also like, well, they're also working in a system that doesn't even give them the chance to be equipped.
100%.
And it's like, we have to be really thoughtful about that too. You know, not only am I not going to be like I'm not going to be classist and be like, those poor people, blah, blah, blah. But I'm also going to be like, well, also those people are stuck in a system that doesn't allow them to even have time to think about going to therapy or have time to take a rest day.
And yet is telling them since they're children, like, having kids is what you do when you're an adult. Like, I just find that so disturbing.
Totally.
And that feels so relevant to
they don't even have choice. I think that's the problem, is like, we put people in a system where it's like, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, no agency.
Not at all. Zero agency. And then when you do have agency, people might criticize you for the choices you make. And I think, you know, it's interesting. I had a refugee woman who had a lot of health conditions one time, and she had 7 kids, and she got pregnant. tons of health conditions, tons of problems. And people in the health team that I was working with, they were critical of her. They were like, why? You need to talk to her.
For not ending the pregnancy?
Talk to her, about it. Because it's risky. This is a risky pregnancy for her, risky pregnancy for the baby. She can barely walk. She went through severe trauma before leaving her country, a lot of torture, a lot of physical health effects from that torture. So and she's raising 7 kids. They're all young. So they're like, she's poor, she's a refugee. Like, don't let her do this. And I'm like, look, I will talk to her and see what she thinks. And I talked to this woman, and I'm like, let's talk about your health stuff. Like, you have a lot of health stuff. Like, how do you see this fitting into your life now? And she was like, I'm not going to deny the miracle that is life. She was like, I think it's a miracle that I can have a baby, and every baby is precious, and I love that, and I'm going to have it. Like, no one will convince me otherwise. So then my job is not to tell her she's crazy. Okay. My job is to be like, all right, then let's look at all the resources available to you to have the baby, and let's look at what will make this the safest, happiest. And she was like, I'd already lost so many kids. I've already lost so many family members. So many people were taken from me. I'm not going to say no to one that's given to me, Not everybody has that perspective, but that is a perspective, And I had other refugee women who had different perspectives around whether they wanted to have a baby. I had one woman who was in an abusive dynamic, and then she got pregnant, and she wanted an abortion, and she's like, but I want him to not know. And we had to go through a lot of work around figuring that stuff out. But that's the thing, is like, those people deserve to be respected as humans with agency, even when the system they're in doesn't want to offer them as many options as someone with a lot of wealth. I mean, if you have a lot of money, you can do literally anything in this world. But if you don't...
You've been chosen.
Yeah, I love it.
Thanks, is adopted too.
It reminds me of my former cat, Miles.
Oh.
Looked like him.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
So, no, that's great. So I think, it is this whole situation of, like, in the humanizing thing, we need to acknowledge ourselves. Like, because, yes, I experience burnout, and so I have to take breaks. Sometimes I just have to be honest, like, not today. Today's not the day. I'm going to rest the rest of the afternoon or whatever. Like, because I'm recovering from being sick. I have a pretty sensitive immune system, so I have to take that into account too. And so all of those factors are important. And I think a lot of people are like, care for yourself first. And I'm like, you know what it is? It's not about it's not about importance. It's about time. So it's like, I will attend to myself in time. If it was just set out in a day, it's like the first chunk of the morning is me attending to myself, so that then I can go out and be the best version of me in my connections and relationships. And then maybe I have a chunk of the afternoon where I also attend to myself again. It's like, that's how I think of it. I think a lot of people have twisted that into like, only you matter.
Yeah.
You matter more than everybody else. And it's like, you actually matter equally to everybody else. Like, I go back to what my therapist said, like, what if you just are like everyone else? What if you are just as important as everyone else? No one is more important than you, and no one is less important than you. What if that was just true?
Yeah, and like self-care as a way to be more, helpful to the world.
And to you in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to come into interactions with my friends and be like not my best self anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, why don't I just take care of myself so that I can be a good person in the world and also in my own life.
Yeah.
For myself, and I think there's been a lot of like backwards stuff getting spread on social media around taking care of yourself and mental health and this, that. And I'm like, it's actually just about like, how can you center so you can show up well, and so you can show up well in your alone time and in your not alone time. How can you curate solitude, and how can you curate healthy relationships?
Yeah.
That's it.
You kind of have to be realistic with yourself about what is and isn't going to work for you. Because I think some people really
and then
struggle.
learn how to communicate it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know how to communicate what's right for them. They do it in a way that's actually hurtful to other people.
Especially if it's contrary to what the norm may be, either for a relationship or society at large. So there can be like shame around advocating for your particular way, or communicating, and
I've had people in my life say things like, I know this is what's best for me, and I know that you understand that's what's best for you because it is what's best for me. I'm like, oh, that's a weird way of communicating. Like, you could just say, like, I need this, and my needs matter to me, and my hope is that by expressing them to you, that also matters to you. Sometimes I might be like, this is what I need, and the other person's like, too bad. Sorry. And then you have to grapple with that. You do have to be like, oh, that hurts and that sucks, but I will now grapple with that over here with these other people or whatever. But I think a lot of people try to, again, control the dynamic around that. And it's like, you don't get to control the other factors or the other people. You just get to control you, which means you need to be okay with what's going on with you. And then you need to accept what's going on external to you and bring in and filter out what works and what doesn't, and find safe places to cope with what's hard. Because we are all going through, I would say, a hard time. It's hard right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing I try to give people is grace.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I'm going through a hard time. They're going through a hard time. Like when I was in Disneyland, this guy yelled at me because he didn't yell. He just was rude. But like they brought out the coffee and my name is Jennica and it said Jen oat milk latte, which is what I got. But the person who it was for is also Jen, also got an oat milk latte. So I just glanced at it, and he got really upset that I looked at it. And then he was like, this bitch fucking, like, messed up. Like, he got really mad and stormed off.
Wow.
On Thanksgiving Day, by the way.
Wow.
And I
that
was
man
like,
is fighting a battle we know nothing about.
He probably has such a strong I don't matter complex.
So many chilies spilling out in his car.
Exactly. And so I was like, you know what? I don't envy that guy. Whatever he's not dealing with.
His internal world probably not very fun right now.
No, I was like, wow, getting mad over me looking at a coffee cup, that's a hard life.
Oof, yeah.
Like, I'm going to give people grace there. I'm just going to. And so the other thing I have noticed that helps me that I don't know, would help anybody listening or, the two of you is just slowing down.
Oh, yeah. It's all about that right now.
Deconstructing the narrative of productivity has been real big for me. And I do it daily because I'm really addicted to being productive. Oh, honey.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like and not just a productivity. Yeah, number one, it's like I feel like I do my normal work, and then even like at nighttime, I'm like I should be doing something that's like pushing me forward in some hypothetical way.
Totally.
But then there's just like a desire of feeling like my life should be this escalating series of fun events and people and things. And if I'm not like doing more all the time, then I'm actually falling behind.
Totally.
And then I'm like craving and wrestling with feelings of inadequacy. It's like doing that, like slow down and actually like zoom out.
And like, what is a good life actually? If we were to talk about that, like, is a good life you hustling your ass off, never sleeping, being super exhausted, losing friends, not being able to go to events that you love with the people you love, and then suddenly being like older and I guess wealthy and not having people around you? Or hustling more? Or is like your life
having to find yourself like at 60 because you just devoted everything to the hustle for so long.
Exactly.
So then you're, midlife crises.
Yeah, or is a rich life built day to day?
Yeah.
Is a rich life built in like you watering your plants for the day and being
yes.
damn, these plants are looking great. Is it snuggling your animals? Is it being on the phone with your friend for 2 hours? Like, is that a life that is rich? And I would argue, yes, like your life is lived along the way.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, slow down, man.
Yeah.
I spent a while reading a book the other day, and I was like, I feel guilt.
For doing one of the best things a human being can do these days.
Because I'm just reading for pleasure. It's not giving me any, I'm not advancing I'm not making money reading.
And honestly, pleasure reading, especially I feel with like fiction, and there's nonfiction too that's really wonderful, but like
pleasure reading can save us.
It's almost honestly, I really feel that way. That it's like it opens our brains to thinking in different ways. We empathize.
Makes you a better writer.
Makes you a better writer. I mean, a better thinker and a better liver. Like a better liver.
Oh my gosh, it's like so joyful.
I need a better.
I love reading. And now, I used to be like a very like, oh, I hate the winter. It makes me so depressed. And now I'm trying this year explicitly. I'm trying to embrace the winter
Me
by
too.
being like, okay, when it's dark at 6, I am actually going to go kind of do a restful thing, or I am going to go home and cook, and I'm going to like find joy in cooking, and then I'm going to find joy in like
Have you read
slowing down
Wintering?
a little bit.
We are going to create the coziest home on earth
Oh yes,
Oh,
we
this
are.
you guys are
winter.
gonna be roommates?
Yeah, we're going to be
Our
roommates.
roommates,
So jealous.
and they were
And that was
roommates.
Have you read the book Wintering?
No.
You will love it.
Okay.
You should read it in ASAP.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to
I
put
read
that
it
on my
last
list.
winter and it was just perfect.
I
should
think
do
like
that.
instead of being so stressed out about like winter being depressing, I'm gonna be like, whoa, what if
Yeah.
it's like
What an
just cozy?
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can read more and I can vibe more.
Do some
I-
soups, drink some teas.
I do feel like the slowdown of the holidays is like humans' attempt to try to cope.
Yeah.
You know how like people work a little bit less intensely between like right before Thanksgiving, kind of Halloween and.
But isn't it funny how the holidays also can serve as this like amp up that
Oh
everyone
yeah,
gets
it's like
really
it's
stressed
Q4,
about?
like
And it's like, what are we doing holidays for if it's not for us all to just come together in a nice way
We
where
gotta
we
be
don't
vibing, yeah.
Like-
I always love it when I see people take work off. I'm like, just take work off.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you would love me.
Use that PTO.
Yeah, use what you got, man. Go take work off and like enjoy your life, enjoy your family. Like I always think about people with kids. I'm like, do you want to watch your kids grow up? Wouldn't it be so cool if we lived in an environment where obviously non-capitalist, like anti-capitalist, where it's just like people could just watch their kids grow up
Yeah.
and do fun things with them every day?
When you're coming home that I don't know when.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my hope, is that whatever work I do end up doing, it builds us toward that type of living.
I think that kind of feels like the golden thread through our whole conversation, from your experience with refugees and unraveling your own trauma and experiences and moving into like film, is that like centering on, I keep saying some version of this, like how things seem so basic and yet are so truly like foundational and radical at the same
They're
time.
profound.
Yeah, and what amazing perspective that you have, having seen some of this in the most like dramatic ways that also are fully applicable in the most minute ways, from like, you know, the little interactions of friends and family to the most insane trauma of a refugee that you could imagine. The golden thread being that like that shared humanity and what it means to live a good life, and how we actually heal as individuals existing in communities where we're all, and environments where we're all interdependent.
And safe, you know, like that's why that keying into yourself is so, so vital. Like we are so good at gaslighting ourselves out of what's real in terms of how we feel or what's right. And they say, you know, back to abuse, they say the number one predictor for whether a relationship will be abusive is a woman's intuition.
Damn.
That's the only consistent predictor. The only thing.
She had a feeling.
She had a feeling. It's the
Wow.
only thing that is always right on the money.
And if it's not her, it's her friends around her. They're like, girl.
100%. So that's why I say any environment you walk into, feel its energy, sense where you're coming from, know where you're coming from first, like that person, trust this person. Walk into a room and be like, does this feel right? Does it feel safe? Does it feel aligned? Does it feel where I'm ready? Am I ready to dive into what this is? When you're in a conversation, when you're in a relationship, just feel it out and listen to your intuition. And then instead of being like, nah, that's just me, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to
too
talk
sensitive,
Yeah,
I'm too-
no, just like accept that. Accept what's coming. And the more we listen to our intuition, the better things open for us. The right relationships, the right rooms, the right conversations, the right environments. They do. They just do.
Yeah.
I'm at the like a satisfying point of my growing up where I've matured enough, but I still feel young. And I, you know, in a lot of your early experiences where you haven't, this stuff is just coming to the surface,
Yes,
and the
and
way
it's
you're like
chaos.
raised is just, you're just starting to grapple with it, and you're experiencing relationships that pull you into old cycles and old familiarities, but with new context. So then you're being forced to do it, and
Recontextualize.
you can be like, I was so lonely so often, especially as I was younger, didn't know how to appreciate my solitude. It was just loneliness and scared, you know, all that. And I would seek out or, you know, take whatever opportunities or, you know, connect with whoever, just if I didn't have to be alone, even if it made me feel uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And now I'm grateful to be in a place where I'm surrounded by people who are like on the same page and who love me in my, totality and all that, and, want similar lives, but also that I do appreciate my solitude, and that like I just can recognize that, and like I'm never going to be like so lonely that I'm going to keep myself in a situation that feels like self-betrayal. I'm like
desperate for love.
I love myself too much, and am okay enough being alone that I don't need this.
And I think it's also like loving yourself enough to recognize that not everybody else will, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Like not every room is your room, but the rooms that are, holy shit, are they?
And they're out there. There's so many people in this world, and so many opportunities, and there's people for everyone. Really, really.
There really is, and I love the phrase that's like there are rooms of people who love you who you haven't even met yet. There are rooms of people who want to hear what your idea, who think you're brilliant, who haven't even met you yet, and the only way you'll get to those people is by gently saying no to the ones that don't.
Yeah.
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 Pruning along the way.
Totally.
And it's again trusting you. That it's the radical self-acceptance and love. It has to be radical for you to do it.
Do you like Tara Brach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seemed like it.
Yes, I do.
Oh, that feels like a lovely end point, unless there's anything you think we should have said.
Feels great.
Wow, what a lovely conversation with
Thank
a
you.
lovely person.
Now you go. I'm like, we could literally talk for years.
I completely get it.
endlessly.
I'm like, I just want to soak up everything that is you. I'm like, I just need to osmosis it.
Thank you. This was such a beautiful experience. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, spending a week in upstate New York together was exactly that. I was
Yeah.
just like, can I just sit here and just listen and
I felt
ask
the same.
questions?
It's like everything you say is like you're speaking our language so directly, but then you also seem to be the complete opposite of me in that you just have this like amazing drive and like ability to just do stuff and to make an impact that I really admire.
Thank you. That's generous. I think, wow, that's incredibly kind. I think it is funny. I am like look, when I was a kid, I was like, I'm going to change the world. That's the only option I have. I have to save the world. I got to save the world. I used to think I was going to like develop some medical breakthrough that was going to like change the world. And so now I'm like, dude, if I do something cool, that'd be awesome.
I mean, you have.
Yeah.
You really could stop now, and it's like that's more impact than most people make in a lifetime.
Oh, well, that's really kind. I think I just want to see a difference get made. And, especially when I think about how much fear people live in, I'm like, if I could just help people live out of a space of love and not fear and be safe enough to do it, whatever that means, whatever I have to do to make that happen until I don't have the opportunity to do that anymore, I will.
Yeah.
Because, like, my life feels like it was given back to me a couple times. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do whatever I can with it.
Well, we're so grateful that
Thank you.
you have survived, that you're here.
Thank you. Me too. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me on the show. And your show's so cool. Just like really inspired by both of you. So.
Wow.
Thank you. And thanks for coming on. This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, I listened
lovely.
to the show, so don't worry.
All right. Well, thanks so much for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. If you want to support the show, please join our Patreon. We could really use all your help as we go into a new year because
Into
we've got
Q4 and beyond.
Q4 is your patronage could really save Q4, and we really need someone to save
And
Q4.
look at this friend, this kitty friend.
And Banksy
Really
needs a
appreciate
teeth
it.
cleaning at the dentist. So
We need the support.
And where can we find you online? And
Oh, gosh, I'm actually working on all that right now because I hate that side of stuff. I hate the self-promotion side. I'm so bad at it.
Yeah.
But I'm on Instagram, Jennica __ Anusua. I'm sure we can post it somewhere.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. Also, I have a website. I have a
If you want
link
to hire you for
tree.
acting, talk to your agent.
Hire me for things. If you want an actor or
is Jennica 1N?
2.
Oh, that's right.
And then I'm gonna be doing some writing, some acting, some mental health things. So I'm out there in the world doing my stuff.
So excited to see all that you make.
Yeah, me too.
Same.
Mhm.
We'll be making some of it together. so.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, love you guys.
Y'all.
Good luck
Bye.
with it all.
Do the holidays. Take care of yourselves.
Yeah. And we'll see you soon. Bye.